The janitor everyone laughed at was the last man anyone expected to save a life that day. He swept the floors quietly, kept to himself, and wore the same faded uniform every day. Most employees didn't even know his name, some called him Old Rag, others Mop Man. But on a day when chaos struck the heart of the company, this invisible man became the one person who stood between life and death. The story began one rainy Thursday morning at Linton Technologies, a place filled with shiny glass walls, busy suits, and important meetings. The CEO, Miranda Linton, was known for her sharp eyes and colder tone. She built the company from the ground up, and everyone feared her authority. Her daughter, Lily, a sweet 10-year-old girl, had come to visit her mother's office that day for a Bring Your Family to Work event. The office buzzed with laughter, and for once, even the janitor, Henry, smiled quietly as he watched the families arrive. Henry had worked there for nearly 15 years, unseen yet ever present. He knew every hallway, every emergency exit, and every person's routine. Still, he was treated like furniture, something that just existed in the background. A few young executives mocked him behind his back, making jokes about how he probably couldn't read the labels on his cleaning bottles. But Henry never reacted. He'd just nod politely, push his cart, and move on. No one knew his story. No one cared that morning. As the CEO was preparing to give her speech to the staff and their families, Henry noticed something odd. Miranda looked pale, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched the podium. She brushed it off, smiling tightly at her daughter sitting in the front row. But Henry had seen that kind of look before. He recognized the signs of distress, the faint blue tint around her lips, the uneven breathing. He froze for a second, his old instincts whispering warnings in his mind. The speech began, and Miranda spoke strongly at first, but then her voice faltered. She reached for the glass of water beside her, missed it, and suddenly collapsed to the floor. Gasps filled the room. Her daughter screamed, "Mom! Mom's dying!" Chaos broke out. People rushed forward, shouting for help, calling 911, but no one knew what to do. Panic rippled through the hall. Executives stood frozen, their suits useless against fear. Then, Henry dropped his mop and ran forward. His movements were fast, too fast for someone his age. He knelt beside Miranda, his voice calm but firm. "Someone call emergency services now," he barked, checking her pulse, tilting her head back. The staff hesitated, stunned by the sudden authority in his tone. Yes, you in the blue tie, get her medical file from her office now," he ordered. For the first time, people listened. Lily was crying uncontrollably, clinging to her mother's hand. Henry looked up at her gently. "Sweetheart, it's okay. I need you to take a step back for me. Can you do that? Good girl." He began chest compressions, steady and precise. His hands pressed rhythmically, his breath measured, as though he had done this hundreds of times before. A few employees whispered, shocked. "How does he know what to do?" one murmured. "He's just a janitor." But Henry wasn't just anything. Years ago, before the wrinkles and the uniform, he had been a decorated combat medic in the army. He'd saved more lives than anyone in that room could imagine. But after losing his family in an accident, he'd left everything behind, his medals, his career, his name, to live a quiet life where no one expected anything from him. Cleaning floors was easier than facing memories, and now, as Miranda's breathing returned faintly, Henry checked her pulse again. "She's got a weak heartbeat. Someone get the medics ready when they arrive," he said. His voice was calm but sharp. Within minutes, paramedics stormed in, taking over. As they loaded Miranda onto the stretcher, the lead medic looked at Henry with recognition. "You did good work, Sergeant," he said quietly. Everyone froze. "Sergeant," Henry just nodded, wiping his hands on his uniform. "Old habits," he said softly, before walking back to his cart. In the days that followed, news spread across the company like wildfire. The CEO was recovering, thanks to the janitor. Employees who once ignored him now looked at him differently. Even the ones who mocked him felt a heavy weight of guilt. When Miranda returned, still pale but smiling, she asked to see him. Henry stood in her office, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "You shouldn't be standing, ma'am," he said softly. Miranda smiled faintly. "I should be thanking you. My daughter would have lost her mother if not for you." Henry shook his head. "Just did what anyone should have done. She looked at him carefully. No, Henry. You did what only a few could have done. She paused, emotion catching in her throat. You were a soldier, weren't you? He hesitated, then nodded. Once. A long time ago. She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. You know, it's strange. I've spent years trying to lead people, to be the strongest in the room. But that day, the strongest man here wasn't the CEO. It was the janitor no one saw. Henry smiled faintly, the lines on his face softening. Ma'am, sometimes people just need to be reminded that worth doesn't shine, it shows up when it's needed. Later that week, the company hosted a small ceremony in his honor. There were no big speeches, no cameras, just the staff, the CEO, and her daughter, who ran up to hug Henry tightly. Thank you for saving my mom, she whispered. Henry knelt to her level and smiled gently. You take care of her, okay? She's a strong lady, but even strong people need someone to remind them they're loved. As applause filled the room, Henry stood quietly in the corner, uncomfortable with the attention but deeply touched. For the first time in years, he felt seen not for what he'd lost, but for what he still carried inside: courage, compassion, and purpose. That night, as he walked home under the streetlights, he stopped to look at his reflection in a store window. The man staring back wasn't just a janitor. He was someone who had spent a lifetime cleaning up messes, both literal and human, and that day, he had cleaned away more than dust. He had wiped off the blindness from everyone's eyes.